What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to another live edition of Always Talking Ball with Tyler Noe and Lance Barton. We are here. We are 4 minutes away now from the first ever 12-team college football playoff reveal. Actually, 3 minutes and 30 seconds. We're watching it here on our iPads, talking with you fine folks. Hit us up in the live chat on YouTube. Hit us up in the live chat on X. Let us know what you think is going to happen here. Do you think it's going to be SMU or Alabama? Last team in. Do you think Notre Dame is going to be ranked ahead of Texas and Penn State? How do you think those three are going to be ranked? Do you think Arizona State is going to get the 3 seed or Boise get the 4 seed? Who knows? We don't know what this committee is going to do. We never do. That's the fun part about this. So I'm going to turn it over to my buddy Lance. We were in Indianapolis last night for the Big Ten championship game. Great game between Oregon and Penn State. Obviously, we were watching the SMU Clemson ending. We tweeted out right after that. That was about the worst possible outcome you can ask for if you're an Alabama fan or Alabama team. Last second field goal loss. And that was the best possible outcome for the ACC.
Yeah, it was. It really was. I mean, as far as what people tell you that the best and worst outcomes are of these games, we've talked about it. That, I want to say that I think a word that, including me, has said a lot that I regret saying a lot is the word precedent. Uh, because let's just be real, this committee's job is not to set precedents or not set precedents or anything like that. This committee's job is to get the best and most deserving, or 12 teams in this 12-team playoff field. Uh, and let's just be real, they are faced with a really tough decision as far as the whole precedent thing wants to be said, because there's two precedents that are going to be set if you believe that they're setting precedents or not. One precedent is you could be in this college football playoff field and then go play in a conference championship game and then get knocked out. That's a bad precedent to set. The other precedent that you're setting is that you can have 0 good wins, and you could have a team that plays a much tougher strength of schedule and beats really good teams, i.e. the SEC champion Georgia, and other good wins as well, and you cannot get in. And the precedent setting there is that these teams should try, and these conference commissioners should try to finagle these schedules and make schedules as easy as they could possibly make them. Because SMU, it's true, SMU had the weakest schedule of any ACC team in the entire conference. Texas, for anybody listening, everybody will say, what about Texas? Yeah, Texas had the easiest schedule of any team in the Southeastern Conference. Indiana had a very easy schedule in the Big Ten. Overall schedule, Boise has an easier schedule than some of these Power Four teams. I mean, that's just the reality of this situation. So, I don't really know what they're going to do. To be honest with you, if I have to call it, I've already put it out on what I think the committee will do. I think they will put SMU in. But if they are going off of, if you think about this, if you just remove external factors and thinking about precedents and thinking about anything like that, and you just do what the job of this committee's actual job is to do, which is, guys, let's take a look at this and see who has the best resume of these teams and who should get in. If they do that, like I said, I think Alabama right now has the number 9 ranked strength of record, and SMU is number 16 strength of record. That's a pretty big difference in strength of record. Alabama's strength of schedule is 16, and SMU is now 60th after playing Clemson last night. Alabama's 3-1 versus top 25 teams, which the committee apparently cares about, and SMU is 0-2 now against top 25 teams. And the last thing I want to say on this, dude, did you not think it's kind of just fitting that how just beautifully flawed and dumb this sport is?
Oh, yeah.
That we are all sitting around talking about that the reason why a team is going to get in this playoff possibly is because of 1 quarter of football? Think about that. Like everybody's saying because SMU played a close game. They played a close game and lost, and they think they're going to get in. People think they're going to get in. They were down 24-7 going into that 4th quarter. So because of 1 quarter of football, across an entire season, that's what people are basing a lot of these opinions off of. But also on the flip side of this, if you're Alabama fans and you're Alabama, you can't be crying that you didn't get in when you just, 15 days ago, lost by 21 points on the road against a mid Oklahoma team.
Mm.
So, again, I don't know what you do, man. I really don't.
Yeah, the schedule thing is interesting because, yeah, I mean, how do you, with the NIL and portal, we've said it all the time. You don't know what teams are going to be good, which years. It's not like it
Right.
consistent how it was. You have an idea of what your traditional powers are going to do, but you don't have an idea of what Indiana is going to pull off in 2024. So how do you work the schedule around in the conference to and how are you going to play favorites to get some of those teams in?
Yeah, I mean, to
We
your
should
point
talk
again,
about the non-conference schedule. I was over on 3Tech and I brought that up, and everyone's just like, oh, this is gonna, don't schedule anybody in the non-conference. We're not like, why are we kidding ourselves? Like, Alabama did not have a tough non-conference schedule. Like, they played Wisconsin at Wisconsin. You did a good job scheduling that game. It sucks that Wisconsin was not good, kind of like it sucks for Texas that Michigan didn't end up any good. But SMU arguably played a tougher non-conference schedule. They played BYU, they played TCU, they played Nevada. Like, they played tougher teams as a whole.
yeah, I'd
It's
agree
just
with that.
it sucks that the SEC. I mean, this is kind of what the SEC has built. And if everyone wants to complain about SEC bias, all that SEC favoritism, all that, look at what the SEC conference has done in the last 15 to 20 years compared to other conferences in the amount of the money that they've invested into their programs. And we're seeing it on the basketball court now. They are investing into their programs, they're investing into coaches, and it's paying off. If ACC and Big 12 want to be up there, invest in your programs, invest money. Like, this is the payoff. But also, on the downside, the SEC is going to get the most teams in, but they're just someone's got to be left out. Like, that's the unfortunate part. And they're all very great teams, and they're just beating up on each other. And this is kind of what you get.
Yep,
Oh, we got old Nick
100%.
Saban on here today.
Yep. Oh, Herbie's on. I mean, Herbie says this every single year when he gets to this point. He always says, "That's great that everybody wants to talk about all these things, but who's the best team and who has the best resume, guys?
Yeah.
Who do you think wins the game if they play each other?" And that's a very subjective opinion, obviously, and you shouldn't go off that. But like, those are things that he always says when it comes to this. So, correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler. In regards to resume, is the only thing that SMU has over Alabama the fact that they got 2 in the loss column and Alabama has 3? Or am I missing something? As far as
Um,
overall, the main things that we know that they look at strength of record, they look at strength of schedule, they look at wins, they look at all that stuff. What is the? Oh, I guess SMU doesn't have any bad losses.
no bad
That would be
losses.
no bad losses,
Better record. Yeah.
no bad losses, and better record.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be, you know, I heard somebody today say SMU deserve. People need to quit using the phrase right now, deserve. SMU has beaten no good teams this year. Like, I mean, okay, let me rephrase.
You could say SMU deserves, Alabama deserves, Miami deserves, but you could also turn it around and say nobody deserves. Like, none of these
Correct.
teams deserve. We're arguing about the 11th best team in college football, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
Nobody deserves this spot, but somebody's got to get it.
we
So,
knew this was going to happen when they expanded. Like, we're going to
right.
it's just if they expand to 16, we're going to be arguing about the 15th best team in college football.
Yeah, like, I don't necessarily think that, like, so deserve and the word fair. Now, that is the main word everybody needs to throw the heck out. Like, okay, it's not fair that SMU gets left out if they played for a conference championship game. It's not fair that Alabama played a much tougher schedule. Like, guys, I mean, come on. Like, I don't know what you do in life that you'd all of a sudden start using the words like, well, that's not fair. We all know life's not fair. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, but I mean, again, for those that maybe that just joined, one of the number one things that everybody keeps talking about is precedent. You're setting a bad precedent no matter who you choose between SMU and Alabama. You just are. You're setting a bad precedent for conference championship games in regards to SMU, and you're setting a bad precedent to playing a tougher schedule, and you're setting the precedent that teams should. We've already heard, like, Chris Kleiman, we've heard Big 12 coaches say it, we've heard Shane Beamer say it, we've heard Lane Kiffin say it, we've heard even some Big 10 coaches now coming out and saying it. It's like, we should try. Like, we should get with our conference commissioners and like try to schedule as easy as we can if this is what we're going to do. But also, the main reason that everybody needs to throw the word precedent out, what happened 5 years ago or 2 years ago or last year in the college football playoff rankings has absolutely nothing to do with this year. What happens in this year's rankings that they're about to reveal has absolutely nothing to do with next year's rankings, and sure as heck won't have anything to do from 2 years from now, because this current format that we're in now is more than likely going away
Yeah.
in 2026. Like, we're either going to have 14 teams or 16 teams, or we're going to have 12 teams, and they're going to remove conference champions getting those top 4 buys or whatever. Like, there's going to be changes made in 2 years. And most of all, there's going to be some new committee members on
Yeah.
this committee next year that has different opinions and different thoughts on how what they believe is the 12 best teams or how you get to the 12 most deserving. There might be 3 people on the committee next year that gets on that committee and says, I believe you should have more quality wins and ranked wins, and that means more than bad losses. And that means more than having the most amount of wins and the least amount of losses. So precedent needs to be thrown out. Fair needs to be thrown out. This committee is tasked with putting who they believe is the 12 best and most deserving college football teams in the country in this game. If they believe that SMU is that, put SMU in.
Mm-hmm.
If they believe Alabama is that, put Alabama in. And last part, I think you'd agree with this. They backed themselves into a corner by where they had these teams ranked going into this weekend. Like, where I would hear your argument, I've already mentioned this. Like, SMU, this committee believed that SMU was the 8th ranked team in the country going into last night, and they believed Alabama was the 11th ranked team in the country going into last night. Somebody please tell me what Alabama did last night or yesterday on the field to prove different to the committee. Yep. Did they prove that sitting on the couch? No. So there is where the problem lies, is that you already had SMU as the 8th best team in the country, or 8th ranked, and I'm not going to say best. They had SMU as the 8th ranked team in the country without any ranked wins.
Yep.
Well, they still don't have any ranked wins. So by Alabama sitting on the couch, are you going to drop them behind them? So that is where they back themselves into a corner, and that is what, if you are arguing on behalf of SMU, that is by far the number one thing that I would be wanting to ask. Mm-hmm. Like, how is that possible? And then if you're arguing on behalf of Alabama, you're saying, how can this team not have any ranked wins? And your reasoning, Ward Manuel said with his mouth, verbatim, live on ESPN, when Reese Davis said, Ward, what gave Alabama the nod over Miami? Well, Reese, Alabama was 3-1 against top 25 teams, and Miami was 0-2 or 0-1, whatever it was. And they had 0 wins versus top 25 opponents. How many wins that SMU got against top 25 opponents? So, again, that was what they said last week. So they've backed themselves into a corner no matter what they choose. So, again, we've already put out who we think this committee is going to put in, and we don't think it's going to be Alabama. We think they're going to put in SMU. But I think it could be interesting. Now, moving on from that argument, based off, again, what they said last week about not moving teams that didn't play in games, they're going to stay in the order of which they were in. So if that's the case, then Notre Dame, the teams that didn't play that were in those top 10 rankings, like Notre Dame, Indiana, Ohio State, Tennessee, those teams should, based off what he said last week, should stay in the same order, not necessarily in the same exact ranking spot, but in the same order from which they're going to be chosen within these rankings that are revealed today. Where it gets interesting is, where do they have Texas? Where do they have Notre Dame?
Yeah.
Where do they have Texas where do they have Texas, Penn State, and Notre Dame? Right? Who's going to get that 5 seed between those 3, 5 or 6 seed between those 3? Those 3 teams are going to be 5, 6, and 7, right?
So one of those teams is going to be ticked that they got the 7 seed, right?
Agreed. And based off what you and I, we were in lockstep. We both agreed that we think Notre Dame is going to be the 7, right?
Yeah.
Again, based off what the committee has said.
But again, we're not punishing, that much for conference championship losses. So
No, we're not. Again,
yeah,
we don't know what the committee's going to do. We think that's what the committee's going to do.
yeah,
And honestly, it would be just easy. It would almost be kind of lazy, but easy to do that because you could say, well, this past weekend, going into last night and yesterday's games, you had this committee had Texas ranked number 2 in the country.
hmm,
This committee had Penn State. Was it Penn State 3?
yeah,
Yeah, you had Texas ahead of Penn State already, and you had Texas and Penn State ahead of Notre Dame. So it would be just easy for them to just say, well, Texas lost in overtime to Georgia in extra time, and Penn State lost a really close game in an absolute shootout in a battle and probably looked the most impressive they've looked all year against Oregon. So we're going to slot them right behind Texas because that's the order they were already in. And Notre Dame was already behind both of those teams. So we'll just go ahead and they didn't play in a conference championship game. So we'll just have Notre Dame behind those two.
yeah,
Yep. And then you already had Ohio State ahead of Tennessee. So neither one of those teams did anything this past weekend. And Ward Emanuel said, they're not going to change the order of teams that didn't play. So
hmm,
that means that Tennessee would be 8. Sorry, Ohio State would be 8. Tennessee would be 9. And Tennessee would be traveling to Columbus if they go by what they've already said. They may
yeah,
change. As we all know, this thing we may see may be completely out of left field, and they may have an order that's based off of nothing that they've told us so far, and that just be the order that they want to put them in.
yeah.
They may all
Molly,
of a sudden decide today, Tyler, that strength of schedule and your best wins matter the most. And Ohio
yeah,
State's at 5, and Alabama is in the field, and Texas has dropped down lower because they also don't have any ranked wins, and Penn State's dropped down lower because they've only got one ranked win. But they may decide to do that.
yeah, yeah. Molly McGrath was just in Clemson, and obviously they're feeling pretty solid today. They're squarely in this thing. Probably not getting a bye, but I was just on with Moose, and he said, no 3-loss team should make it, but there's one 3-loss team out there that's squarely in the playoff, and that's the old Roy Bus and the Clemson Tigers.
Hey, they won the ACC championship game. Get in there.
Yeah. Um, so that'll start a whole nother argument after the season's over about these automatic bids and the buys and all that stuff. What we're gonna get here in a couple minutes. It's probably gonna look like a pretty unbalanced bracket.
Yeah,
But man,
but
you were right about this thing, dude. It's we started at 11:55, so we appreciate everybody joining in right now. But yeah, they still haven't revealed this thing. It's 12:15
yeah,
almost. And they
they
haven't
did.
revealed this thing.
Yeah, I wasn't going. I was fine with getting on as early as you wanted to get on, but I was telling you, I was like, they're not going to reveal these rankings until about 15 minutes in.
Again,
They're
this
not
is a
paying for
this
these
is a
reporters. They're not paying for these reporters to go to all these places to, they're going to give all their stuff right now.
yeah. And again,
And
this is a TV show.
exactly,
Okay,
this is
this
for
is a TV
ratings.
show, and
Yep.
these playoff games that we're gonna get in 2 weeks will be basically a TV show with commercials and everything. So we got to keep that in mind. And I mentioned it on 3Tech. I said, listen, most people, if they are really serious with themselves, who would you rather watch in the playoffs? It would be Alabama over SMU. And some people would love to see their team watch Alabama and watch what they think is a better team in Alabama. And some people just want to hate watch.
Hate
Some people
watch.
just want
Yeah,
to
there you go.
watch
I was going to say most
Alabama,
people
and they
don't want Alabama in, but they want to hate watch them.
yeah, and if Alabama
Yeah,
makes it in, they just want to root against them, right? And
exactly.
that's just what they live for. So, um, everyone's and all the reporters are talking to people, and they're all making their arguments and everything. And
Politicking, baby.
we're gonna get to the ranking here eventually. I think. I mean, are they gonna release this before NFL kickoff? I mean, good lord.
Yeah, well, let's talk about this. Let's just keep going over scenarios for the people that are here live. So most people probably would believe, well, Clemson beat SMU, so Clemson's going to be 11. If SMU's in the field, you're saying, well, Clemson beat them, so yeah, Clemson's going to be 11 and
Hmm.
SMU's going to be 12. We don't think that's going to be the case
No,
because Clemson was all the way back, like deep into this top 25 of the rankings,
17th.
17th. So for that to happen, they would have to jump multiple spots and jump a bunch of teams that, like South Carolina,
Yeah,
who
that beat
already
them.
beat Clemson. They would have to jump all three of those SEC teams in Alabama and South Carolina and Ole Miss, and they'd have to jump Miami. So we don't think that's going to happen. Like we think Clemson's probably going to be somewhere around 14 to 15, 13 to 15, 14 to 15 in the actual rankings. But
Yeah.
remember, folks, this playoff field isn't rankings; they're seeds. These 12 seeds, not the 12 rankings. So Clemson's the ACC champion that'll probably be ranked around 15, 16, 14, somewhere around there, which means they're the 12 seed. And for them to actually be the 11 seed and for SMU to be the 12 seed, Clemson would have to jump SMU in the rankings, or
Yeah.
SMU would have to be slotted behind Clemson in the rankings. And if that happens, Alabama is in the field because that
Yeah.
would mean that SMU's behind Alabama in the
Yeah.
rankings. So again, if SMU is in the field in this 12-team playoff field, if they're the ones that get the nod over Alabama, they're either going to be 10 or they're going to be 11. They're either going to be ahead of Indiana at
Yeah.
10 because we talked about that earlier.
Mhm.
Okay, if you're not going to punish the team that lost in the conference championship game over someone that did not play in a conference championship game, i.e. Indiana, then that would mean that Indiana would be the 11 seed, SMU would be the 10 seed, Clemson would be the 12.
Yeah.
So,
I was just smirking over here because it's just fitting for college football that they just went to a TV commercial. Just a good old 3 minute and 10 second TV commercial right here.
yeah, they got to get these pizza Papa John's and Shaq in here, all the millions that they probably paid to get this slot
Yeah.
of this commercial at this time when everybody's sitting here
Oh
waiting
yeah.
for these rankings. Now, I don't disagree, man.
Yeah.
Uh, dude, hey, had a blast last night with you, man, in Indy.
Yeah.
We appreciate folks that came out and hung out with us, and
Yeah.
old Nick and Ryan
Yep.
that came to kick it with us at the what was that place called? Tom's Watch
We were at
Bar.
the Tom's Watch Bar, downtown Indy.
Free advertising for you,
Absolutely.
Tom's Watch Bar. Great
Yeah.
spot. Great spot.
Absolutely packed
It
with
was.
Penn State fans and Oregon fans, and we saw some Ohio State fans who probably couldn't dump their tickets, and Indiana fans, and we had an LSU fan sitting right in front of us, and
Yeah, we had go figure. The drunkest person in the stadium last night was probably the LSU fan that was decked out in LSU gear that was sitting right in front of us,
yep,
and he broke out in an SEC chant out of nowhere
yeah,
during the game.
yeah,
You could imagine what people thought of him.
yeah,
Uh, hey, how about the Hoosiers chants that were breaking out in
oh
the
yeah,
restaurant and in
yep,
the streets and stuff?
yep.
It was
I got a couple
yeah, it
comments
was
here on YouTube. Ice
well,
Productions 22 says we are Penn State.
all right.
Josh Collins asked a question: do they change the auto in for conference champs if a team like Clemson loses in the first round?
Josh, first off, you the man. Miss you, brother.
Props
Uh,
again, and Josh, I'll tell you this: I got to give props to the Georgia Bulldogs. I've been really tough on the Georgia Bulldogs this year. I've been really tough on Carson Beck, and none of that really changed yesterday because a backup came in and led them to the victory that Carson Beck was not
Gunner
able to do.
Stockton. Great name, by the way.
But hey, man, props to the Georgia Bulldogs. That was a gutsy win over a really good team. Like we said in our preview last week, this might be a bad matchup for Texas. So here's the hoping we don't get to see that 3 times because we already know what the deal is there, right?
Yep. Yep. And Josh, to the point of your question, unless you can correct me if I'm wrong, bro. But I think what's going to happen is in 2 years when this current format, when its contract is up, I do think starting in 2026 that conference champions are not going to get like automatic like buys. That's not going to be the highest ranked conference champions are not going to get the automatic buys. Like we think that Boise and Arizona State are going to be the two teams getting the automatic buys at 3 and 4 in whatever order today. We think in 2 years from now that the highest ranked conference champions will still get in the playoff field, but they won't get the top 4 seeds. They'll just be
Yeah.
in the field, and they'll rank them whatever order that they're in based off that.
All right, so they're going over the playoff again.
The
Talking
format,
about
which again, a lot of people still need to see this. It's amazing how many people, but again, they've made it so confusing
yeah,
that oh, dude, like people that actually know college football really well I'm not gonna call them out. Was talking on the phone to somebody on my way home from Indy today, and oh yeah, they were like, wait, how can so and so be this seed, and how can so and so be like they're not gonna be in the field? I
yeah,
think it was there like, how does Arizona State like? Are they gonna be in? Yeah, like and stuff. So it's and I was like, not hey. Think about that person, how shocked they'd be if we didn't have this conversation, if they saw these rankings and was like, wait, not only are they in, they're the
Mm-hmm.
3 seed, they're
Mm-hmm.
the 4 seed.
Yeah.
So there will be a lot of people watching this today that have no idea. I hope they're seeing this part of it so they can understand how this bracket works again.
Yep.
But I'm sure they're about to reveal it, but we'll just keep going. Last night at that Big Ten championship game, uh, seeing Penn State open up their offense like they did was awesome. But they finally, after maybe James Franklin saw your tweet, bro.
Here we go.
Are we going?
We'll get back to James Franklin.
All right.
It's gonna be number 1, Oregon.
Yeah. There's Oregon, number 1. Yep. And you might be a little ahead of me, so if whenever you see them pop up, just list them out, bro. And if you haven't said anything, I'll list it out for me. This was the easiest thing that they had, was these two teams right here. So Oregon's 1 and Georgia's 2.
Yep.
That was the easiest decision they had to make of this.
Mm-hmm. Be interesting to see what's 3 and 4.
Yep, it will. We think Boise will be 3 and Arizona State 4. We'll see if they actually still go with that. That's
if Arizona State. If Arizona State jumps up to the 3, that means they would go up from 15th to 8th in the rankings.
Yeah,
they would jump Boise.
That's why we think. I mean, again, they had Arizona State several spots behind Boise. What did Boise do this weekend to make? And we know what Arizona State did to make you think they should be ranked ahead of Boise. But what did Boise do to make you think Arizona State should jump that far ahead? All Boise did was go out and clap UNLV's cheeks again for the second time this year.
Yep.
So, I mean, that is, and they had UNLV ranked pretty high in the rankings, like back in the back end of the back 25. That's what they thought of UNLV. So, yeah, I mean, Boise won by double digits. So I think Boise is going to be 3rd, and Arizona State. Even here, the strength of record stuff.
Yeah. Brett
and
McMurphy's out here trying to spoil stuff.
The what?
Brett McMurphy's out here trying to spoil stuff. He's
Don't
trying
look at
to
this.
he's trying to be he's trying to drop Woj bombs on this playoff committee.
Yeah, when you're looking at that, Boise is 3. Okay. Yep. Again.
Now they're ranked number 9, so they moved up 1 spot.
Yep.
So that would lead you to believe that SMU dropped behind them.
Yep. Again, I was almost confused myself. I was like, wait, they're 9? Where's Tennessee going to be? That's not ranking. That's the seed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good for Boise, man. I think it is very fitting. Again, everybody, they're college football fans right now. How fitting is it that the first G5 team that is in this playoff, new 12-team playoff field, is the team that really put the G5 on the map?
Yeah.
In Boise.
Yeah.
The old Chris Peterson and Kellen Moore. There's Arizona State. The Fun Devils at 4. Just an absolute shellacking of Iowa State yesterday.
Yeah.
And Cam Scatterbo just does his thing. I hope he gets I'm of the belief that 5 people every year, every single year, 5 people should get an invite to New York for a Heisman ceremony. That's what I think.
Yeah.
That you should recognize 5 players every year and give them recognition at the ceremony. And what Scatterbo's done, putting that team on his back like he's done. Sam Levitt, QB, Arizona State's played really well.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind it at all if Scatterbo got an invite to New York or wherever the ceremony's at. So Arizona State's at 12 in the ranking.
Arizona State's at 12. Okay. They slotted them in between some SEC teams there, it would seem.
Yep. This is getting interesting, bro, already.
If Alabama's out, Alabama's going to be 13. Right?
Right.
I mean, yeah. Well, I guess Clemson. No, they could be 11 because Clemson and Arizona State could be behind them. But still
That's right. That's right. God, this thing, man, unbelievable with this thing.
5 seed's going to be.
Wasn't
Arizona State's a good team, and
they are.
They showed it yesterday. They beat a quality opponent. So
Clemson's the 12.
12. Okay.
12 seed.
They're ranked 16th, so they only moved up 1 spot. Obviously, they didn't move ahead of those SEC teams like South Carolina that we talked about.
Right. So we were spot on about that. So far, we've gotten all of this correct on what
honestly,
we felt like the committee
you're looking
would
at okay, these are still power conference teams, Clemson and Arizona State. If SMU's the 11 seed, like the 6 seed might be where you want to be.
Yeah. Well, 5 and 6 are going to be good, but the 6 seed is
The 5
probably
seed, I think, is tougher. I mean, you got Clemson and Arizona State. Those are Power 4 teams. At least if you beat SMU, who was literally a
that's true.
transition team to Power 4, and then you play Boise, that's a pretty easy path. And then in the semis, you get either Oregon or Georgia, figuratively. So,
So Texas is the 5.
okay.
So again, we're lockstep of what we thought this committee would do.
So Penn
For
State and
those that
then
didn't
Notre
join
Dame, right?
earlier, yeah, for those that didn't join earlier, they already had these teams in this order. Texas was ranked number 2 going into this past weekend. Penn State was ranked number 3 going into this past weekend. Notre Dame was ranked were they 4?
Yep.
Notre Dame was ranked 4th. Notre Dame didn't play in a game. Texas went to overtime against Georgia in the SEC championship game, and Penn State lost to Oregon in a fantastic game that we were at last night. So if you just keep them in that same order, then we think that Texas is going to be 5.
They're going to wait to do the 11 seed.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be
11
the
seed
last
will
one
be the
revealed.
last one that they show. No doubt about it, which obviously is what they should do.
Yeah.
That's absolutely what they should do. So we think the 6 is going to be Penn State, right? What
Yeah,
the
Penn
committee
State.
would do. We think the committee is going to have Penn State at 6.
Mm-hmm.
And we think Notre Dame is going to be
I
at
could see
7.
Notre Dame, but I think it's just easier
I
for
could
them to
too.
just slot them Penn State.
Right. I could see either one of those teams at 6. We think it's going to be Penn State, and it is.
Yep.
Penn State's number 6. As far as rankings are concerned,
Good Lord. Penn State has, if that's SMU at 11, I mean, James Franklin's got no excuses to make it to semifinals. And if he doesn't, he is going to be feeling it.
ridiculed. Yeah, that fan base.
That's not a bad path for losing in the Big Ten championship game.
It's not, man. It's
Unreal.
not. And a lot of the Penn State fans that we talked to yesterday, it was wild, dude. Before the game, there was not one person other than our boy Matt Massaros, but he wasn't at the game, but he was texting with me. That not one Penn State fan that we talked to there live, like there at Tom's Watch Bar or before the game or anything, felt like they had a chance to win.
Yeah.
Notre Dame 7. So again, so far, man, we are 100% spot on for what we both put on X today of what we thought this committee would do. So, all right, Notre Dame's at 7. Could we have a Hoosier State showdown between IU and Notre Dame squaring off up there in northern Indiana?
It's going to be either SMU or if SMU's in, it's going to be either SMU or Indiana at 10.
Correct.
And then a possible Irish Georgia matchup in the Sugar Bowl. No, not the Sugar Bowl.
Georgia
the
does
Peach
need
Bowl.
Georgia does need, like Kirby was talking about afterwards, we do need a little bit of a break from that schedule we just played. And they do before they play that physical bunch from Notre Dame, if it is Notre Dame that they would end up be playing. Because we know that Notre Dame's a physical bunch. So what do we think they're going to go with next? Do you think they go with the 8 or 9?
Ohio State.
So again, everything's exactly what we said it was going to be. We think Tennessee is going to be 9. Based off what they've had. So nothing so far is any bit of a surprise at all.
So I hope Tennessee fans were booking, hotels in Columbus the past week because that matchup was pretty much locked in.
Yep. What an awesome matchup that'll be, dude. We're going to break down these matchups more going forward. But we've seen Ohio State has had issues with teams with really good defensive lines of running the football because of the injuries that Ohio State have had along their offensive line. And the offensive line that they currently are trotting out there just obviously isn't as good with losing an All-American tackle and another tackle and a guard. I mean, they lost multiple dudes on their offensive line. And now they're going to go have to block this Tennessee defensive front, who is arguably the best defensive line and has the most depth along the defensive line. Yeah, man, that's going to be Will Howard. Will Howard will have to win that game offensively for Ohio State. There's the Vols.
Definitely will.
And we figured that 8-9 would probably be a pretty sick matchup no matter what. It's almost like in the NCAA tournament in the first rounds, like those 8-9 matchups in NCAA tournament and hoops. They're always pretty solid matchups.
Yeah.
You get a really good Big East team versus an ACC bunch or a SEC team versus a Big East team, whatever, in the 8-9 matchups. SEC, Big Ten, the Vols, and the Buckeyes in Columbus in the Horseshoe. Sign me up, dude.
Yeah.
That will be fun.
I mean, wasn't the spread already 9 last week?
And hey, if we should have, you're right, we should have done guess the spread last week, because if you would have brought that to my attention last week, your boy here would have hopped on a little +9 action.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a really good football game. A really good football game.
Okay, here's where it gets interesting. We got 2 spots left. We got 10 and 11 left.
Agreed. And we think there's a chance that 10 here, if 10 is SMU, then Indiana's in and Bama's out. Indiana would be 11 and Bama would be out.
Yeah, our buddy Freddie said Oregon went undefeated this year and has to go through Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia to win it all.
Good call out, Freddie.
And
Hey,
look
or
at Georgia
Tennessee,
down
or
there.
Tennessee, Freddie, or Tennessee.
I mean, and he said Greg Sankey screwed over Georgia in the regular season, and now they get rewarded with the best path to the title game.
Probably so.
Here we go, number 10.
All right, Indiana's 10. So
Indiana.
it is 10, Indiana. So we've got a Hoosier State showdown. All right, well, I'm going to quit talking for once and let the drama build here at 11.
Yeah.
I'm turning it up.
For those who are just tuning in, Lance is an Alabama graduate, Alabama alum. He's an Alabama fan, obviously. We try our best to be impartial around here for 99% of the time, but
Absolutely.
we're going to get his raw reaction here. And I think he's pretty much made his feelings well known.
Yes.
On Alabama doesn't deserve and SMU doesn't. I mean, we'll see.
All right, again, if we're going off resume, they're showing the resumes now. Alabama's strength of record is 9th, SMU's 15th. Strength of schedule, Alabama's 16th, SMU 60th, 6-0. Wins and losses over teams that are 500 or better. Alabama 5-1, SMU 5-2. Key wins, Georgia, the SEC champion, and South Carolina, who's ranked in the top 15 for Alabama. Louisville and Duke. All right. Yeah, they're still waiting. They're still talking about it.
They'll probably go to commercial.
They'll do like a Bachelor. Find out after the break.
Yeah. I mean, it's an ABC company.
It is. It is. But we've talked about it. There's 2 bad precedents. No matter what you look at here, there's going to be a bad precedent that's going to be set. Okay. So if the committee believes that SMU should be the 11 seed and they believe that SMU is a better football team than Alabama, they should put SMU in. If they believe Alabama's the better team, they should put Alabama in. Here it comes. It's SMU. It's SMU. So Bama's done. Bama's done. As a fan, that sucks. So they decided that the precedent of playing in the conference championship game and punishing them over somebody that did not play in a conference championship game and that was sitting at home on the couch is the precedent. They decided that having a worse strength of schedule and a worse strength of record and an overall worse resume, that precedent going forward was better to set. But like we talked about, I don't think they're setting precedents or anything like that. I really don't, because of going forward. So, yeah, sucks. But
Yeah,
hey,
Clemson,
good for SMU and Rhett Lashley and the Mustangs. They're in this thing. This is over now. Nick Saban's talking now. Intrigued to hear what he has to say in regards to it. I'm pretty sure he's talking about.
And if Clemson, you can listen to that and you can let us know what he says. But if Clemson,
So Saban just said, we have to ask ourselves going forward: is there any benefit of playing tough schedules and really good teams? Is there really any benefit to it? Like, ask Kirby Smart, would he rather had Texas' schedule this year as opposed to the schedule that he had and won the SEC championship that way? You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
nobody can answer that except for Greg Sankey.
that's right, because that's Greg Sankey's fault. That's not Kirby Smart's fault. That's not Texas's fault. But if you're an Alabama fan, which I am, you can't cry that Alabama didn't get in this playoff when 15 days ago you got absolutely worked by a very average to below average Oklahoma team by 21 points. Worst regular season loss that Alabama has had since 2003. when they lost 27-3 to LSU, as far as point differential is concerned. That's what it was. So I want to hear what Herbie has to say here too. Yeah, Herbie just said that we can talk about all the wins that Alabama has and all of that, but at the end of the day, we think that this came down to the fact that at the end of the year, Alabama got blown out at Oklahoma. He said the way they lost that game is probably what kept them out. Do we disagree with that?
No.
Like if Alabama loses that game 27-24, 27-20, like a close one possession game, we might be looking at something different here.
I mean, and again, last night, if Clemson just steps on the gas even more and they win that game 48-14 and SMU doesn't fight back and claw back, this isn't even a conversation. Like, nobody would think SMU belongs on the same field as any of these playoff teams. So,
no, let me ask you this.
and then, again, that ultimately results are decided on the field. And, that's kind of the main takeaway here.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to bring this up to you. Do you think what I was talking about earlier, I brought it up to you earlier, isn't it kind of silly, which is fitting for college football, that everybody was talking about in regards to SMU and Alabama, that if SMU just doesn't get blown out, like you just talked about, like if SMU doesn't get blown out, if they play a close game. So they were down 24-7, right? Going into the fourth quarter. So basically we're saying, like, if everybody's saying that, we're basing it off of one quarter of football. That's the difference here. That's what pushed SMU over the top, was one quarter of football. But I don't necessarily think it's that. I do think it's the fact of when you actually take down and you look at all 12 games, I do think that Alabama has again, if you're looking at resume, that's not SMU's argument. Your argument can't be resume if you're SMU. I think this committee valued the losses, the types of losses that these two teams had, because that is the only thing that SMU has over Alabama at this point. Do you disagree?
No. And I think that you might not be talking about just it's not get down to one quarter of football. It might just be that they played one more quarter of better football this year than Alabama.
Could be. Could be.
When you're because and that's interesting to see what Ward Manuel says, but they say it's a whole full body of work, right? Whether or not that's true, that's what they say.
Yeah, we don't really know what they actually. We'll see what he says, but I want to bring everybody back to this statement that was made last week by Ward Manuel. Last week, like earlier this week, not even last week, earlier this week on Tuesday night, right? Ward, why Alabama over Miami? From Reese Davis. Ward Manuel back to him. Well, Reese, Alabama's 3-1 versus top 25 teams, and Miami has no wins versus the top 25.
Okay? I'd love to hear someone ask him why Indiana over Alabama, to see what their justification would be for that.
Right.
It won't be ranked
why
wins.
Texas over Alabama?
It's just whatever when they compare two teams, what's going to make more sense? When they ask us this question.
Yeah, dude, I couldn't agree more. They are going to, because a lot of people on some of the videos that we were putting out on social media was talking about, like, we were saying, like, who's Miami beating on this list, and we had a list of ranked teams there, and we had several people comment below. It's not several, a lot of people comment back and say, now do Indiana. How many of those teams on this list have they beaten? Now do Texas. How many people on this list have they beaten? So I know we can cherry pick SMU if that's what we want to do, because I know that's the team that it's like, between in this scenario. But there's other teams in these rankings, which is, again, based off what they've done since their very first ranking that they came out with all the way until right now. The only time that they decided to say good wins mattered, like really good wins actually mattered, was when they decided to put Alabama ahead of Miami. If what they have here with SMU, then Miami should be ahead of Alabama, too. That should have been the case. Because there's no difference here. There's none. There's zero. As a matter of fact, Miami's best win is also SMU's best win. It's very similar.
The only difference is one more regular season loss.
Correct. Correct. So, well, the field is set, and so SMU will play Penn State, right?
SMU
SMU will
plays
travel to
Penn
Happy Valley
State.
to play Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that'll be a cold weather game for the ponies. If they thought going to Charlotte was cold, and they posted that picture to their social media, looking like they were going beyond the wall to face the Wildlings army from Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
uh, when they were going just to Charlotte, North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
they in for a rude awakening of what they're going to see weather wise in regards to Happy Valley in Pennsylvania
Yeah.
in middle of December.
Yep.
So get the bracket. Hey, guys, one more time. This is called production. My man here got him pulled up.
Yep.
So, yeah, based off these paths here, we've said all along that the 5 seed was going to be the easiest path. I mean, again, Penn State could lose to SMU, guys, and maybe it won't look so easy, okay? But based off what we have to go off of right now, I think anybody can look at this bracket and you would say, all right, who on the left side over here has the easiest path? Or who on the whole bracket has the easiest path to make it to the semifinals?
We know the answer.
It's not hard. It's Penn State, the 6 seed. Penn State plays SMU, then they play Boise. Would you rather be Oregon that has to play possibly Ohio State in your first game in a playoff? Or would you rather be Penn State and you get to play SMU and Boise State instead of playing Ohio State or
Yeah.
Tennessee or Tennessee? Yeah.
I
If you're
know.
Georgia, would you rather play SMU and Boise or would you rather play Notre Dame and then have to play Penn State
Yeah.
and then have to play either Oregon, Ohio, whoever comes out of the top of the bracket? So, yeah, I think we realized pretty quick that there's some flaws here in how they do these seedings and how they do these buys and how they do these where they put teams in regards to if you're a conference champion, you get the top 4 buys. So yeah,
Seems
but
the worst path.
yeah, but by the way, there are going to be a lot of people really mad next year when they start citing strength of schedule. But just know, guys, again, the whole precedent thing, throw it out the window. Okay,
Yeah.
Tyler has said it all year. This committee will just do whatever the heck they want to do.
Yep.
Like, they'll just do whatever they really want to do. Next year, there'll be new committee members. Like, some of these same people will be on there, but there will be other new committee members. And they will probably do things completely different than how they're currently doing it now.
Mm-hmm.
And if SMU goes in Indiana, if those two teams go and get just waxed in these playoff games and they're horrible games to watch and they're an awful product being put on the field, they probably will change how they do things next year. If you are subscribing to the part of you want to see the little guy have the shots and you want to see SMU over Alabama or the other SEC teams and you despise the SEC and you hate Alabama, all that stuff, and you want to see what just happened today continue to happen moving forward, then you better be a huge SMU Mustang fan.
Yeah. Got what you asked for.
Penn State.
Got what you asked
And
for.
yeah, and SMU, whether they know it or not, I mean, again, they're not going to be sitting there thinking about this. Obviously, when they're playing the game, when the ball's kicked off, there will be no thinking about this. But
Yeah.
they are carrying a lot of weight on their shoulders for the little guy and for the teams that are like, again, if you don't want some of these teams from the SEC and the Big Ten that have more losses than you
Mm-hmm.
to get in over you, then you better go perform well in these playoffs coming up. And again, Kevin Jennings is legit. He is legit.
Yeah.
And Penn State will have
You
their
had
hands
buddies
full.
saying, "What if Kevin Jennings is on Alabama?"
Yeah, exactly. One of my buddies, Jake, if you're listening, my buddy Jake from Alabama texted us last night and said Alabama would probably be undefeated if Kevin Jennings was the quarterback at Alabama this year. And I don't necessarily disagree with him. Again,
Yeah.
Milrow's not bad. He's just not a very good thrower. He's a really good
Yeah.
athlete. But Jennings can sling it, and he's a good athlete. So, well, like I said, field is set. Do you have something you want to add in regards to any of this right now, or do you want to kind of talk about some of these matchups?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see what the rest of the rankings were. I'm
What
not
they
sure
ended
if
up?
they moved much, but they don't have any. They don't have anything up yet. They're still talking to Nick. They're still talking to Herbie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we got plenty of time to talk about all this stuff that Nick's talking about and everything. As far as how we should change this, what do we do to make this better? Um, there was always going to be someone pissed off, no matter what. Lance mentioned at the beginning it was kind of the committee boxed themselves in on how they rank these teams, and SMU was already ahead. And what did SMU move down to 10? So they dropped 2 spots. Um, so does that mean Indiana moved up to number 8? Was that in the rankings? Did Indiana move up to number 8? Because Boise was 9, right?
Boise was 9, yes.
But Indiana was ahead of Boise last week, right? Because
Yes.
so Indiana moved up 1 spot, Boise moved up 1 spot, SMU dropped 2.
Yep.
So I think there does need to be, yeah, they clearly didn't do it this year. I mean, they maybe did it to a certain extent, but you've got to take strength of schedule into consideration. Um, you know, we talked about Alabama, we talked about Notre Dame. Like they've got some really tough non-conference games coming up in the next half decade. And 2 of those are going to be against each other. They got to, here in 4 or 5 years, they got a home and home with each other. I don't think anyone's necessarily saying those games are going to go away, but you've got to somehow make a reward for those games. You've
Yep.
got to reward teams for actually scheduling those games. Um,
Because right now Clemson's ranked 16th, I think, in these actual the actual rankings, not the seed, but the actual rankings itself. If Clemson
yeah,
would have played Georgia State in Atlanta week 1 instead of Georgia, and they got beat 34-3 by Georgia in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, if they would have played Georgia State in that game instead, Clemson would have been ranked higher than 16th.
yeah.
So
I want to give a shout out real quick to my buddy Aaron Beasley if he's listening to this. He's a massive, massive Indiana football fan, Indiana sports fan in general.
yeah,
And he might do this every year, but he bet at the beginning of the year on DraftKings, just a little $5 bet, Indiana to make the playoff at 100-1. And
all
his
right.
$5 bet paid out, or his $5 bet paid out $500 for him. So if he does that every year, I mean, he's still in the positive. He's
Oh,
made
he can
out.
do that for a lot of years. Yeah, congrats,
Yeah.
Aaron. That's good stuff, man.
Yeah. And
Especially when it's
so
your team, especially when it's your team that gets in. So like, he
he's the
just
type of
won.
guy, I think he does that, for the Colts, and he'll do that for Indiana basketball. He'll do that for the Pacers and all that stuff. But he finally won one. So
What a
congrats
happy
to
guy! What
him.
a happy guy today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he was
Five.
a happy guy last week. He knew they were getting in.
That's right. That's right. Five Benjamins plus plus he gets to see his team
That
Indiana
pay
on
that
this
could pay
bracket.
for a ticket to go up to South Bend and watch that game up there in the freezing cold.
Yep.
Which again, that kind of takes out any advantage Notre Dame has as far as weather goes, because Notre Dame will have plenty of advantages other places, but
Yep.
yeah, they will not have an advantage playing cold weather. Tennessee, it gets pretty cold in Knoxville, so I don't think it's going to be much advantage.
Nope. Agreed.
SMU, Dallas gets pretty cold. They just played a game in 30 degrees last night in Charlotte. So really, I don't know if there's much of a weather edge unless you get, some snow at Happy Valley or in Columbus. There's not much of a weather edge there for anybody. So
Yep.
I
No,
think
I don't
everyone's kind
disagree.
of looking forward to that, looking forward to seeing, some teams from the South come up to the North and play, but not this year. It's not going to happen.
No, I don't disagree. Now, obviously, Indiana, Notre Dame. I mean, both those teams. I mean, we just saw Indiana play in a snow game against Purdue and put up 60 billion points
Yeah.
in that game. I don't think the cold
Yeah.
really mattered at all
Yeah.
for them there. So, yeah,
All right. Gut reaction. Who's winning this thing?
Georgia. Remember the
More,
text. Remember the text that I sent you
the
in
more
the
things
first half
change,
of
the
the
more they
Tennessee
stay the
game.
same.
Remember the text that I sent you in
Oh,
the
here we
first
go. Hey, we
half.
got times out. We got Indiana Notre Dame on that Friday night. 8 p.m.
Oh, night game in the Golden Dome on a in December. Didn't you say this was the first December game that Notre Dame has played?
This is the
Is it
first game after Thanksgiving at home that they played. I mean, they usually
like
finish the
ever?
year. They usually finish the year at USC or Stanford, and so um,
Ward Manuel's coming up live. I want to hear what he has to say and have a reaction to it, and then we can
so
put a bow on it.
Saturday the 21st, we've got SMU and Penn State at noon. We've got Clemson and Texas at 4, and then under the lights, Ohio State finally gets a night home game. Good for those Buckeye fans after all those noon kickoffs. And they get Tennessee, Ohio State under the lights in the coldest possible scenarios you can have.
All right, so say those Saturday matchups again. Buckeyes at night. Who's
Yeah, so
the
SMU Penn State will be at noon,
okay?
Clemson Texas at 4 p.m., and Tennessee Ohio State at 8 p.m.
Do you think that? I mean, let's be real. The primetime Saturday night game should be the game that is the primetime Saturday night game. That I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
that should be that matchup.
yep.
But number two, if you're a conspiracy theorist out there, isn't it kind of funny that we know the wars between Fox and ESPN? That is that game on ESPN, ABC, or whatever the primetime game on that Saturday
Uh,
night.
Let me try to find if they've got kickoff times on here and TV. I know they just had it on there, but I'm gonna try to find it real quick.
Yeah, you're good. So if it is on ESPN or ABC, that is kind of a shot because we know that a lot of Buckeye fans have been really angry at Fox for how they've got that set up of just constantly playing noon kickoffs and never getting a night game.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first time that they get to be in the hands of ABC and ESPN of deciding their fate of what time that they play, ESPN rewards them with a night game. That's again, if you're a conspiracy theorist, that's kind of funny that like ESPN just taking a little. It should be the primetime night game, but that would be a little bit of a jab. Is it on ESPN, ABC?
I'm still trying to find it.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
Okay, here we go. Yeah, it's on ESPN, ABC. I think the 2 afternoon games will be on TNT.
okay, because I knew that there were like TBS, TNT, whatever, like different channels like that, different stations like Turner Sports and
Yeah,
stuff were getting some of these games.
yeah. You want
Uh,
to do a little? You want to do a little guess the spread real quick?
we can.
Okay.
I'm not gonna have a clue on how
Okay.
some of these are gonna
How about
be, but
Clemson at Texas? This is a FanDuel
oh,
Sportsbook. Clemson at
uh,
Texas,
Texas, 10 and a half.
11.5.
Okay, it's close.
Tennessee at Ohio State.
Is it still around that 9 range for Ohio State?
It's actually 7.5 now.
Okay, but still, that over a touchdown,
Yeah.
I think it's a bargain over a touchdown.
Yeah. SMU at Penn State.
Now this one, is it around that same Penn State 10, 10 and a half, 10 and a half?
7.5.
Ooh.
Last one. Indiana at Notre Dame.
Huh. What was Ohio State over Indiana again? They were like, they came out, I think, around 13 or something, and it ended up like going off around 10 and a half. So I'll say Notre Dame. I'll say Notre Dame again around the same round. I'll say 10. Notre Dame 10, 10 and a half.
7.5.
All right. Around touchdown spreads, basically just giving you a hook that you have to deal with if you're wanting to back those favorites that you'd have to purchase.
Yeah, that Notre Dame IU spread. Boy.
What you've been saying. All right, here's word manual.
You keep an eye on Ward. I'll try to see if we can get some more stuff to pull up here.
All right. So Reese is asking him about Alabama and SMU right out of the gate, of course. Ask him about being SMU not being penalized and not having ranked wins and stuff as opposed to Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
He said the debate that Reese and them were having in the studio was the same debate they were having in their room.
SMU's losses to ranked teams. He mentioned that.
Yep. And then but also Alabama's losses to unranked teams and how they lost those games. He said the way SMU played in that game in losing on a last second field goal. Wow. Okay. And he said is really looking at the entire body of work for both teams, which I just be honest with you, I disagree with that would, if you're looking at that, then it wouldn't be SMU.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think he mentioned, he just talked about Indiana.
yep. He asked, did Indiana ever come under the same type of scrutiny as SMU did in regards compared to Alabama in regards to not having any top 25 wins? And Ward Manuel said they did it the week prior and had a lot of discussions about Indiana the week prior and this week.
I believe he said we value strength of schedule, which is why Alabama with 3 losses is ranked ahead of other 2-loss teams.
Which again, if they're going to rank SMU the way they ranked them, Miami should also be ahead of Alabama. It's the inconsistencies that I think that people want to, like you've always talked about, the inconsistencies of how they do this just make you want to pull your hair out.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't even care about covering themselves on some of this stuff.
I'll tell you what, though, man, they made. I know everyone was talking about SEC and Big Ten getting 4 teams in each and all this stuff, and they made the, I guess, equality part of it and inclusion part of it as well as they could the first year. I guess maybe to appease everybody the first year because Big 12 got a bye. ACC got 2 teams in the playoff field, and they knocked Alabama out in the
Yep.
SEC. So, I mean, if you're the Big 12 and the ACC today, I know Big 12 only got 1 team in, but you guys are hugging
How
each
happy
other
is old
and
Jim
celebrating.
Phillips?
I mean, yeah, he was begging for it yesterday in the worst way possible.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen a more unimpressive interview where a guy was just reading from a teleprompter.
Yeah,
It literally sounded like a awful, awful, awful like political race.
yeah.
Is what it sounded like.
Um, early weather forecast Friday, December 20th in South Bend, high of 32, windy, 24 degrees at kickoff.
Okay.
Saturday in State College, high of 31, snow showers the day before. Saturday in Columbus, high of 34 and windy. Saturday in Austin, high of 63, low of 45.
Do you think that the Texas Clemson game has any chance at all to be a really good game?
Yeah.
I
Oh,
do
yeah,
too.
for sure. I mean,
I do
Texas,
too.
we've said all year long, they just kind of leave a lot to be
Yeah.
desired in
Yeah.
their games, and they almost play to their competition. I mean, they played Arkansas to a 10-point game.
Yeah, like
Uh,
if both teams play their A game, like I mean, Texas wins that game, I think comfortably.
mhm.
But we don't see Texas play their A game
Yeah.
a lot of the times. So, and again, Clemson against the better teams. Again, Clemson's played 2 SEC teams so far. This has nothing to do with SEC bias or anything. It's just facts. They've played 2 SEC teams this year and got destroyed by one of them in Georgia. And it really good game against South Carolina, but still they struggled offensively in that game to score points.
Yeah.
So they scored 3 points against Georgia, and they scored 14 points, I believe, against Clemson. I mean, against South Carolina.
Yeah.
So
Let me
they're obviously
bring
going to have
up.
to score a lot more points in this one if they want to have a chance to win this game against
Yeah.
against Texas.
Yeah. I'm going to bring up here. This is from Kelly Ford, kfordratings.com.
Yeah.
His percentage based on power ratings of, it's ordered and ranked of who has the best chance to win the national championship. Obviously, Texas at the top. This kind of has to do with their path and everything like that.
Yep.
And you'll notice here that to reach the semifinals, Penn State has the second best chance to reach the semifinals.
Yep.
And they're the 6th seed. And then
Yep.
the best chance is the 5th seed, Texas. So
Yep.
that goes into effect of, okay, the 5th seed and the 6th seed, they've got to do something about these buys and these conference champions getting buys because that just can't happen. Like it just cannot happen. You got to have the best four teams. And I know they want to put an emphasis on the conference championship game, but there is a different way to do that because that should not happen. I mean, you should not have Oregon being the only undefeated team in the country being fifth, the fifth best chances to win the national championship game. That's just crazy to me.
I don't disagree, man. This system and how they have it set up is very flawed because of the conference champions and how they get
Yeah.
buys and all of that. And there should be in no world should the 5 seed and the 6 seed be easier paths than the 1 seeds and the 2 seeds. So that's just that's just how it's set up currently. It'll change in 2026. But overall, I do think we're gonna have some good some good matchups there in that first round. I mean, I am fired up for the Vols and the Buckeyes.
Hmm.
That's going to be a good one in
Yeah.
Columbus.
Yeah.
So I honestly I could see Clemson giving Texas all they could handle, depending on which Penn State team shows up. If the Penn State team that cut it loose last night shows up on offense, and I mean, again, I know SMU's got some solid weapons and some speed and all that, but they don't have Tez Johnson.
Mm-mm.
Most teams, nobody has a Tez Johnson that has that type of speed and that type of quickness. I mean, Ohio State's got really good receivers, and other teams have really good receivers, but the type of just me and Tyler talked about it last night. Being there
Watching him in
live,
person.
yes, watching him in person. Like I've seen a lot of college football games live and in person. He's as quick, like in and out of his breaks, of anybody I've ever seen in person. Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And Penn State's got really good corners, and they could not cover him at all. And I wasn't even sliding Penn State. I don't know who can cover that. They definitely need to utilize him even more, like just feature him
Yeah.
constantly,
Yeah.
no matter who they play.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, man, it's gonna be interesting. We've gone on for what, hour and 8 minutes now. I mean, just looking at the bracket, I would agree with you. Georgia's got a fairly easy path. Now, again, we don't know if Carson Beck's gonna play, and if Gunnar Stockton's got to go through 3 games against some quality opponents like that, that might change things a little bit for Georgia. I know they've still got talented defensive players and everything. Um, and Gunnar Stockton looked somewhat impressive. I mean, they still had stalled out and everything, but they had looked somewhat impressive in that second half, putting up 13 points still. But
you saw Georgia, man, the typical scenario you and I talked about in the restaurant where the level of play elevated
mhm.
for everyone. Their
Texas
leader,
should have been up. If Texas should have been up by 14 at the
yeah,
halftime because when they were up, 6-3, 6-6, I can't even remember what it was.
6-0, and then it was 6-3, and then it was. Remember, I kept looking at you and our buddy Ryan that was there,
Yeah,
and kept saying like, telling you guys 7-6, like if the yardage differential and Texas has dominated this game, it's
yeah,
about to be 7-6 Georgia. I was wrong. It was 10-6
yeah.
Georgia is what it ended up being.
When you got them on the ropes like that and you drive down, you can't settle for field goals.
Can't miss field goals.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, that's no doubt all they have to blame on that.
yeah,
They got Dan Lanning on now, and nobody is just taking it more easy and chilling more today than that guy was.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Uh,
One last look at the bracket here.
yep.
Um, so we avoid the Texas Georgia rematch. We might potentially get an Oregon Ohio State rematch in the quarterfinals.
Yep.
Other than that,
There's no rematches we can get unless it's going to be the national
except
championship
for
game.
except for Georgia Texas in the national championship,
Yeah.
or Georgia Tennessee.
Yes. Yeah. Georgia,
Um,
Texas, Georgia, Tennessee are the only other rematches we could possibly see.
or Indiana Ohio State.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if Indiana can get through, if Siggs gets through Notre
SMU
Dame at
Clemson.
Notre
There's
Dame,
another one. SMU Clemson. Penn State Ohio State with a bunch of
that's
stuff.
true. That's true. Yeah. We're tipping our hand of who we
Boise
think's gonna
State,
win.
Oregon, right? Boise State,
Yeah.
Oregon.
Yeah. We're tipping our hand of who we think's going to win the games. But yeah. Yeah, you're right. The most likely scenario of seeing rematches, obviously, is Oregon, Ohio State. And then the next most likely rematch would be Texas and Georgia. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be the next most likely. After that,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
So, uh,
It's gonna be
but
fun.
yeah, putting a bow on it. I mean, again, the committee had two precedents. They had a tough job no matter what they decided to do, and we believe it was even tougher because of how they ranked the teams to begin with going into this weekend
Mm-hmm.
and where they had teams slotted. Uh, this committee in the final ranking, they actually stayed consistent of what they'd been doing since the very beginning, which is uh, only one ranking, guys. Did the committee go against the grain of this, what they've done since their first ranking week that came out in November? Last week, when they jumped Alabama ahead of Miami, was the first time that they hardcore had shown through their rankings that they really appreciated and acknowledged strength of schedule over a team having just more wins or less losses, a team
Yeah.
having less losses.
Yeah.
And then this week, they went away from that and they went back to the team that has less losses is getting in.
Yeah.
So, which is what they've shown this whole time.
Yep.
They valued less losses as opposed to better wins or any wins in their committee's top 25.
Yep.
So they ended up going with that. Maybe they keep that going forward next year. You and I both agree, probably won't. It'll be
Yeah.
something different next year that they'll decide to do.
Yep.
But we got some good matchups, man. Looking forward to it. Uh, as always, this was fun doing our live show. Had a great time with you last night in Indy. Again, we did not have it on the bingo card that we were going to see 82 points dropped,
Mm-hmm.
total points dropped in a game. But that was a blast. That was my first experience at Lucas Oil Stadium. It was my first experience, period, being in downtown Indianapolis. I'd never been to downtown Indy.
Mm-hmm.
So getting to go to downtown Indy and seeing a big event, that's a great Andy Stables and Stanford Steve said this last week. It's a great big event city. I agree. So easy to get around. Man, we were in no traffic
Yeah.
afterwards when we left. Great sports bars that are right there next to the stadium. We appreciate everybody that we talked to last night. Like I said, there was some ATB fans and ATB listeners that we got to kick it with and have
Yep.
drinks and food
Yep.
with there at Tom. We appreciate you guys coming by. Ryan, Nick,
Yeah.
Doug, Sammy, we had a good time. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But when are we back, man?
We're back this week. We'll be back. Don't worry. We're working on putting together some sort of a college football roundtable here, and discussing and getting a lot of other people's thoughts on these playoff games. We've got 2 weeks to break them down. We'll talk a couple of different bowl games and whatnot, but we're going to talk mostly about the playoff games, because those are the games that count. We know bowl games, we have no idea who's going to be sitting out and whatnot. But yeah, so we'll be back this week. We don't know what day. We'll figure that out, but we'll let you guys know. And yeah, we'll just start breaking these games down and figuring out who we like. And also, we're gonna have some sort of a challenge on ESPN like we did last year. We did a bowl pick'em, bowl mania last year, and we got gift card for the winner. Home field gift card for the winner. So if you're listening now, homefieldapparel.com, ATB15, get you 15% off checkout. We'll have that, or we'll have they have got this new college football playoff bracket challenge, kind of like, March Madness style. So we'll see what each has to offer. We'll tweet it out. We'll send it out. We'll let everybody know, how to join, all that stuff. So, we'll sign off for now. The live show was fun as always. It's a bummer that Alabama didn't get in. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about that in the off season, how to fix things and all that. So, yeah, that's it. You got anything else?
Nope.
Okay. So we'll be back. We'll see you midweek for some more college football playoff talk. Appreciate it.